And so he is going to take our Sunday school hour and be presenting about his missionary work, and we're very excited to hear about that. And as you know, Pastor is away on vacation. We're very thankful that him, Don, and Colton can go away and get some time off. And so I'm in his place for now, and so don't be afraid to ask me any questions while he's away. We will try to do our best to answer those and just minister to you while he is on vacation. So, Phil, would you like to come up?
Thank you, Pastor Micah. It's a delight to be back. And Ms. Robinson was asking me, when was the last time you were here? And I, 2019, 2018, something like that. I know it was pre-COVID. It's kind of how we figure out our lives now, right? Pre-COVID, COVID, post-COVID. So it was pre-COVID that we were here the last time, but it's great to be back with you. Herman Baptist has been a partner with us since the very beginning. So when we launched to Africa in 1992, Herman was one of the first cohort of churches that have walked this path with us. So it's good to be back. We've been back many times, but it's good to be back again today. All right, so this morning, what I would like to do in Sunday school is I'd like to update you on what the Lord is doing in Zambia. I would love to open it up for some Q&A, and that in a few minutes when we walk out of here, that you walk out with an understanding of what the Lord is doing and a burden to join us in prayer for the work of God. So I am delighted to have my wife Lori here this morning, and so we'll hang out back there by the table between the service, and hope to get to meet many of you. God has called us to the task of reproducing healthy gospel preaching churches across the continent of Africa. Our vision and the vision of our ministry is to see the gospel go to every village, town, and city across the continent. So since our arrival in Africa in 1992, by God's grace, we've been pressing towards that goal. And so I'd like to share with you this morning some of what God is doing through his church for his glory, and invite you to participate. You may find ways of mission participation as we walk through this time together. And as I said, certainly my prayer is that God will burden you at some point to participate in prayer. Our family was raised in Africa. When we left in 92, we had an 8-month-old firstborn. And now our family is launching out for the service of the Lord almost around the globe. So let me just update you. Some of these kids were here multiple times when they were young. From the left there, Cherith is serving, moved back to Zambia as an adult in 2016, and is serving there as a missionary. She is the director of sign language and deaf studies at Central Africa Baptist University, and doing a tremendous job. Then next is Austin and his wife Rachel, and they have 2 children, Caspian and Adelaide. And Austin and Rachel are in their final weeks of preparation for moving to Zambia as missionaries. So they will fly out of Atlanta on the 25th of this month and join the work there. He will be serving, he has a goal of serving in church planting and also teaching at CABU, and I'll say a little bit about CABU here in just a minute. And then to the right of Lori, just to the left of me is Carmen and her new husband, David. They live in California. He's going to university there, and Carmen is raising support to serve with Fellowship of Christian Athletes. in the Los Angeles area. And then to Lori's right is Tamron. She's going to be a junior this fall at Cedarville University. And then Ashlyn. Ashlyn served with us last year at CABU in Zambia, came back in January, and next week we're driving to South Carolina because on June 15th she's going to marry Jesse Abels. And their goal is to, within the next 2 years, to go and serve as missionaries somewhere. And we'll see how the Lord will lead them. Then it's Colin and his wife Melissa, and they're serving the Lord in a church plant in inner city Detroit, Resurrection Church. And then on the far right is Corbin. He'll be a senior in high school this fall, so he's the only one still at home. So in a year, we're going to be empty nesters, and we look forward to continuing to serve the Lord in Zambia. So we do serve in the country of Zambia, South Central Africa. You can kind of see the point there on the map. Africa is a continent that within this year will reach 1.5 billion people. And then I put a box there, and the reason for that box is that's what missiologists refer to that area as the 1040 window, and I know many of you know what that refers to, but the 1040 window on the map points to the area of the greatest population of peoples, ethno-linguistic people groups that are unengaged, unreached with the gospel. Where people do not live within reach of a gospel fellowship of believers, a local church. And so the 1040 window just to the north of where we are serving. 987. That is the number of identified unreached people groups yet to be evangelized on the continent of Africa. I was looking it up this morning because the population numbers changed so much. I looked up Joshua Project this morning, and they said approximately 430 million people live amongst these peoples on the continent of Africa. Now you start looking at numbers like this, and it's like, my mind can't stretch that far. But think of it this way. There's 360, 380 million people in the United States? Something like that? So imagine, if you would, that every single person living in the entire United States being amongst peoples who, we're not saying they're lost. There's way more lost people, right? I mean, people around us are lost and maybe even haven't heard the gospel, but Herman Baptist Church is right here. They might have heard the gospel and they may live a mile from here, but if they wanted the gospel, it's here, isn't it? Okay, so what we're talking about is the entire population of the United States of America living in groups of people that if they were to seek the gospel, they were to go and look for gospel community, they wouldn't find it because they live amongst unreached people. So the question then is, what do we do about that? How do you reach 430 million of anything? How do you effectively tackle 987 unreached people groups on a continent of 1.5 billion people? And the means that God has given us, the tool that God has given us to reach these peoples is the ministry of Central Africa Baptist University. And I want to show you how that's playing out. At CABU, we have began in 2006. I still serve as the president of the university there. CABU came into existence to train the next generation of servant leaders in Africa for Great Commission living. And there are 5 pillars If you kind of notice there that graphic, I was trying to figure out a way of explaining what God is doing because I'm like a visual guy. So how do you explain it? So at the bottom there, training servant leaders, that's what we are seeking to do. And the 5 pillars or avenues or pathways by which we're seeking to do that, I'm going to explain those to you briefly, with the goal of, or the outcome there on the top of those pillars is healthy reproducing churches. That's what we're after, because we believe that the world is to be evangelized through the replication of churches. It is churches that are being planted and groups of vibrant Christians in communities that begin to reach out through their networks and in their community, and that's how the gospel moves, right? Even in the New Testament. When you get to Revelation chapter number 2 and 3, you have the 7 churches of Asia, right? We believe, the good documented evidence, that the church at Ephesus was the mother church of all those other churches listed, right? So churches plant churches. And evangelism and the gospel goes through centers of Christians like here who are living together in love and unity, love the word, are just sharing their life and sharing the gospel with those within their circle of influence. And like ripples, like a stone thrown into a pond, the ripples of the gospel begin to go out. And what are we seeking to do? We're seeking to throw more stones into more areas of the world so those ripples can go out. And so all of this, obviously, for the goal of the glory of God, to the glory of God, right? Worshipers for the glory of God. So there's 5 ways that we are seeking to, we are using 5 ways that God has given us to train servant leaders for the outcome of healthy reproducing churches. The first is the School of Bible. And we have grown to around 200 students on our campus, training for ministry. And then the School of Education. So Africa's interesting. Our area of Africa is quite interesting demographically. Numbers change, so these numbers from a few years ago, but roughly 75% of the population in our region is under the age of 25. And 49% under the age of 15. And so we want to leverage gospel opportunities, the proclamation of the gospel and the discipleship and the integration of these who believe in Jesus into healthy local churches. And one of the means by which we believe we can do that in our context is by training disciple makers to go into the primary school classroom. And so we have a school of education training teachers to teach in primary education and to go as disciple makers. Then the School of Graduate Studies is our seminary. About 2 years ago, we were accredited. Right now, we're offering a Master of Arts in Christian Studies, and we hope within 2 years to also add to this a Master of Divinity degree. This is both for in-person training, but we have the full setup for students from across the continent to come into the live classroom using digital means. So they're not there physically, but they're there in a live class interacting with the teacher and the other students in their class. So we have about 30 students right now from across Africa that are enrolled in the School of Graduate Studies, and we expect that to grow in the days to come. This is interesting. So I don't know who does all these kind of statistics, but here's one. 90%, it's estimated that 90%, so that's 9 out of every 10, African pastors in our region of Africa, in our area of Africa, have never had the opportunity for formal theological education. So they've come to know the Lord, they've learned something from the Word, and they're pastoring churches. And so due to life, where they are in life, the demands of their ministry in whatever area they're in, many of them do not have either the academic background to be able to come into a degree-granting institution, or they're just not in a place in life that they can break away from everything and study that way. So what do we do to help equip 90% of the evangelical pastors on the continent of Africa? And that is what we do through Theological Studies by Extension. We call it TSE, Theological Studies by Extension. And this is where we send our faculty, our vetted alumni, we send trainers to location. So we'll go to a town or even rural areas, wherever it may be, and the pastors in that area organize themselves, and then we vet whoever's organizing it. We vet that group, and we approve them, and then we send trainers. And we have 15 weeks, so we'll go on site for 15 weeks, 15 classes of theological training and instruction. We have about 43 cohorts that we're engaged with right now in 6 different countries, Zambia being one. And we have 2,017 pastors enrolled in this training program. Now, we have vetted another 48 cohorts, but we don't have trainers. So we can't stretch ourselves that far yet. But our goal is that we will get there. So that's the fourth pillar, theological studies by extension. The last pillar, the fifth pillar, for training servant leaders to produce healthy, reproducing churches, is Imbila Publishers. The word Imbila is Bemba, and it means good news. The Imbila Publishers, we opened the building that you see there. There is on the front third of the building is a bookstore and office space where we run things from. And then the back 2/3 probably of the building is all the printing equipment, binding and all of that. And so Imbila Publishers opened the beginning of March this year. And our goal is to provide accessible, affordable theological resources for the African church. You know, one of the challenges is just the economies of scale in countries like Zambia. And then where do you get books? So you order, you import from the West or from Europe, very expensive. But we can take a book that costs maybe $8 or $10, $12 at Christian book distributors. You know, you go online or on Amazon and you purchase that book. We can print that book and sell it for $1.80, $2, something like that. So it brings the cost down, still a stretch for some, but brings it down into an affordable rate. One of the things, I mentioned theological studies by extension, one of the things that we do is when we go on site, and these pastors have organized themselves, they cover their own lodging, their own travel, their own food for the week. That we don't cover any of that. That they have to organize themselves. But we send the trainer and we send the resource. So if they're studying biblical theology, then at the end of the week, they've got the notes from the class and they'll get a book on biblical theology or hermeneutics or whatever it is, right? The church, maybe. Maybe the 9 marks of a healthy church. That's one of our resources that we give away. And so all of that comes through the Imbila Publishers. And just kind of a photo of some of the things that we have published already. And we hope that during the rest of this year, we have, I think, 10 other volumes, 8 or 10 volumes that we hope to bring through the presses there. So you see one of the printing presses on the left, and a book that we published and distributed last December. All right, yeah, that's the same. 98% of our graduates are serving the Lord in and through the local church across Africa. We have graduates now serving in 14 different, either graduates or students from 14 different African countries. And 98% of those who graduate go out and serve the Lord through the church. It cost us $4,500 to have a student at CABU in the accredited program, four-year degree program. It costs us $4,500 a year per student. And if you have paid university bills for your kids lately, you know that looks very attractive from an American viewpoint, right? Like, whoa, it's 10 times that sometimes if you send your kid to university. But $4,500 is a stretch, a real stretch for most who would be studying in Africa. Some training tools, Faith Radio. We have a 24/7 radio station. I mentioned Cherith and sign language and deaf studies. If you were to put all of the deaf worldwide together into one group, they would form the third largest unreached people group in the world, the deaf. And they live in and around us in Zambia, and the majority of them have never heard the gospel. Why? Because their family can't speak to them. They don't learn how to speak to them. And so these people, by and large, are ostracized. They're a shame to the family because of their disability, and so they're hidden. They are ignored. They're not brought out into the mainstream of society. And so we are seeking to attack that and to train two things: to train the hearing, to be able to speak in Zambian Sign Language, to share the gospel with the deaf. And now, this year, we have 3 deaf students who are mainstreamed into our university. So we've got interpreters in each class, and one of those brothers is studying missions, and the other one is studying to become a pastor. And so our goal is to see the deaf trained as servant leaders and going out and planting churches that are going to reach the deaf community. We're also, God has opened since 2010 an opportunity. We are training the majority of evangelical chaplains in the country of Zambia. They come to our campus 5 times a year for a week at a time, and we provide certification for those chaplains. And so another great opportunity. We also are leveraging the tool of conference and block classes on our campus. And all of this being leveraged in order to train servant leaders for Great Commission living. Someone asked me in the last church I was in, how many are we training this year? And I don't have an exact number, but I would say with all the different things that we're doing, it'd be close to 3,000 men and some women. In that number. I mentioned the radio station as one of the tools, Faith Radio, and so we would love for you to pray for that. Here's the deaf studies. I went and talked about it all and didn't show you the photos, but there's the deaf chaplains. This was the graduation there on the left. This was one of the women constables. She was hilarious. She danced across the platform. She was so excited to graduate. And then conferences and block classes. This is inside the new Athanasius Student Center. We can seat about 850 people, and we can seat over 1,000 Zambia style. So Zambia style is not what you people are doing here this morning. You guys are like stretched out everywhere, right? I mean, Zambia style is we are together. And so we praise the Lord for those opportunities. All right. These 2 brothers that are standing with me in this photo on the left there, the tall brother on the far left, Alfred Yakojo, and then to his right is Emmanuel Juma. Both these men came to Zambia from the country of South Sudan and then became members of the church where I serve as the lead teaching pastor, which is Kitwe Church. And so they became members of Kitwe Church, and both went through the undergrad program and then the graduate program. And 2 years ago, just at the end of COVID, we as a church, Kitwe Church, became the sending church for Emmanuel Juma, that's Emmanuel and his family, and sent them to the country of Juba, the city of Juba in the country of South Sudan. So again, perspective-wise, right on that 1040 line, but on the bottom side of it. And so they're up in the country of South Sudan. And then this January, we became the sending church for Alfred Yokojo and his family. And so we sent the second part of that team, that church planting team, up to Juba, South Sudan. And this photo, the baptism photo, was taken probably 4 weeks ago now. This is in the Nile River. And one of our elders, Hector Garcia, traveled up, and that's Alfred Yokojo, and they had their second baptism service at Community Bible Church in Lemongaba, and I think had six adults who were baptized. This also was the photo there on the bottom of the chartering service for Community Bible Church. So 2 years of labor and Bible studies and services and training and winning people to Christ, and 18 adults signed the charter to formally establish Community Bible Church in Lemongaba, South Sudan. This is just a side note, but it's so cool. So one of the 18 is a deaf Sudanese. Now, how did that happen? So when Emmanuel and Regina were in Zambia, Emmanuel's wife enrolled at the university and went through the sign language and deaf studies program and learned Zambia Sign Language. When she and her husband now were sent to South Sudan to plant a church, she began an outreach to the deaf in South Sudan. This brother came to know Christ as his Savior and was one of the 18 who signed the chartering document for this new church plant. So that's a blessing. So what is the outcome? What are we looking for? I've mentioned it already. We are seeking and striving for healthy, reproducing churches across the continent of Africa. I want to show you what that looks like. So we are in year 32. I know that's such a big number. We were very young when we went to the field, all right? So 32 years. And when we first arrived in Zambia, together with our colleagues, Neil and Jeannie, we planted the first church, which is Faith Baptist Church of Riverside. And I pastored there for 14 years before handing that church over. During that 14 years, the Lord raised up men through the church, and the church sent them out to plant churches in our own communities. And so the first one was Chapata Compound, which is a squatter's village just nearby. And then the second one was across the river out in Kakolo, where some years later we also founded Faith Children's Village, and out in Kakolo. And Pastor Edward became the pastor of that church. And then the third church that was successfully planted was Faith Baptist Church of Kwacha Township in the city of Kitwe. And then we transitioned in 2006, I think. We transitioned leadership. I resigned as the lead teaching pastor and walked the church through the transition. And they called Saidi Tushimba as the teaching pastor at Faith Riverside. Under Saidi, the church continued to grow, and they took over a church plant that had stopped really in the area of Wusakili. They sent a guy to Mindolo, which is the north side of our city, and planted a church. And then the next town, Kalalushi, they planted a church. And then in 2013, 2014, when I resigned as the pastor, I remained a member of the church. So for the next 7 years, Lori and I were members of that same church that we had helped to start. And my focus was getting the university started. In 2014, we asked the church for their blessing to start a Bible study in our city where we would target unreached peoples, and the peoples that nobody else in our city was attempting to reach. And so Faith Riverside gave us that blessing. And Kitwe Church, we started meeting in 2015, and in May of 2016, we formally organized as a church. Then Saidi transitioned and went down to the capital city of Lusaka and pastored a church down there. And the church called Chopo Mwanza to be the interim pastor. Now here's what's interesting about Chopo. So Chopo was saved as an 11-year-old boy in junior church at Faith Baptist Church. So Lori would have taught him in junior church back in the day. And came to know the Lord, on fire for the Lord, grew up, was called to ministry, came to CABU, graduated from the program there, and then Saidi transitioned. They asked him to be an interim for a year. They said, "You're too young to be our pastor, but you can be an interim." And then after a year of interim, they said, "No, we need you as our pastor." And so he is pastoring Faith Baptist Church of Riverside. And you can see under his leadership, and you can see what has happened. So the Kokola Church in those early days planted Chantete, which is further out in the rural area. And we've already mentioned the effort of Kitwe Church to plant out in Sudan. But it didn't stop there. Riverside Church has sent a missionary to the Sudan, which is North Sudan. That's right in the 1040 window. In fact, the Sudanese are in the top 100 least reached peoples in the world. And so they've sent a missionary church planter to that region. They've also sent someone to the northern part of Zambia in Chilenge. And then the Lord has allowed us to send Ryan to reach the Somali people, another least reached people on our continent. And so our church now has 3 sent missionaries, the Yokojos, the Jumas, and the Shiel family, all sent to various places across the continent. And so this is what we're after. Churches that become strong and healthy, that find within their context how the Lord will enable them to plant other churches. So churches planting churches that then plant churches. And that's our goal, to train more pastors. I mentioned $4,500 per year to have a student at CABU. That number, we subsidize that number by $2,500 per student. So the student doesn't even see that as part of their bill. That's subsidized. And so this is a prayer point. This is where the lift is needed. To be able to come alongside and partner to get a student through the training, student like Emmanuel Juma, through those 4 years of training, so the Lord can launch them back out to pastor and to plant churches across the continent. We're in a project right now. That's what will be the front side of the Kasonga Theological Library on our campus. And that big open area there on that building will all be glassed in, be glass windows and 2 stories of library. And then on the back side of that building will be the seminary and the seminary offices. We hope and plan that we will have this building completed by the end of August. The contractor keeps pushing the date back, but hopefully by the end of August or thereabouts, that building will be completed. Pastor Micah mentioned he saw an article on the Gospel Coalition this last week that just came out. And so if you want to go there, you can find it, 30,000, I forget what the title is, 30,000 something, African library, 30,000 volumes or something. But it's highlighted in the Gospel Coalition. It kind of gives a history of the ministry there of CABU and highlights the Zambia Library Project. Our friends at Christian Book Distributors down in Peabody have sponsored a container they're going to send a container, they're going to pay for it and deliver it to our campus to fill this library with books. And so our task is to put the books in the container. And so if you want more information, you can go on our website or you can see me and I can share that with you. If we were to purchase all those books, we're estimating that's probably a $300,000 project. I think some of them will be donated and others will need to purchase. And so two things that right now that are opportunities. One is to help a student be able to get through their theological training and launch out into ministry, $2,500 a year sponsorship, and then of course the book project that we are working on. If you're a techie, you can put your cell phone up and it'll take you right to the website, so you can check that out. All right, yeah, they got all the young people doing that, seeing if it works. All right, let me know if that works. All right, okay. So what I'd love to do. What time are we done? 9:30. 9:45. Perfect. I have something to share with you from the Word as well, so I can go there. But I think I would prefer take these few minutes. Maybe I can come down on the floor and comments, questions about the work, the ministry. Any comment, clarification, question, contribution, feedback? Just tell me your name. Tell me your name and then ask your question.
Hello. Hi, I'm Nina Speed.
Hi, Nina.
And this is probably a stupid question, but...
There are no stupid questions.
Oh,
all right.
yes, there are. The library. I was thinking about the library, and I have some family that are retired missionaries, and they have tons of books.
Yeah.
Their books would be in English and Spanish.
Right.
And so filling that library, probably you're looking more for money than you would be for books in the correct language.
Yeah, so you bring up, I'm going to answer your question, but you bring up a good point. So Zambia was a former British colony, and we have 20 million people and 72 languages. Okay? But English is the only official language. So the language for education in Zambia is English. And so all of the education from the third grade, if it's a good school, it's from the beginning, but third grade on by law has to be done in English. So all higher education is done in English. So all the books that are going into our library are English. Okay, so that's number one. We do have categories of books, specific types of books that we're looking for. If they are in good condition and lightly used, I can give you the website and you can go. It tells you exactly what to do and where to send them. But CBD is collecting those. They're going to box those. They will load the container. When the container's full, they'll send them. So lightly used. So what we don't want is just at somebody's library dump, because usually in somebody's library, half the books probably aren't useful for us. So they're going to go through those to make sure that they're useful, but we've got some categories of books, commentaries, and other types of things that would help somebody if they wanted to donate actually a physical book. And yes, we're accepting those. It does give us a lot of flexibility to get certain volumes that we definitely have identified that we need on the shelves through a financial contribution. If you choose to do that, 100% of those funds will be spent on books, and those will go into that container. Somebody asked me this last week, what happens if you get too many books for the container? And so I asked Christian book distributors, what does it mean if we get too many books from the container? They said, don't worry about it, we'll send you a second container. So, it's a gift. We've been given a gift to get those books there. So please pray with us about that. And if you want to participate, see me after and I can give you further information. Thank you. Somebody else have a question? Yes, George. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Come on, Micah. Got to get moving there, brother.
I was going to ask what language you teach in, but also, say someone from the States wanted to go and study there. Would that be possible?
Yeah. Yes, it is possible. We're an internationally accredited university. So our graduates are doing seminary work in various institutions around the world. So it is possible. However, it's an African institution, and our specific, the head of the point of the spear, it is preparing African brothers and sisters for African ministry. We have done some sharing with other institutions where they send someone, and that kind of thing. So yes, it is possible, but we're not going to fill the place with Americans. But it is possible. And from an accreditation standpoint, it's fully accredited like any institution would be here. So great question. Yes, ma'am.
Sharon Nickerson.
Hi, Sharon.
I think you already answered the question, but I was going to ask what language you publish your books in.
Okay, that's actually a good question. I mean, obviously the books for Zambia are in English, but we have been discussing French resources because an hour and a half north of us is the country of, used to be Zaire, right? Now it's the Democratic Republic of Congo. So we have that to our north, a bordering country. To the west of us is Angola, Portuguese. Okay, so we have the capacity to obviously publish in whatever. We have helped the guys up north get some French books, and I think probably we will do a lot more of that as their ministries are developing to help resource them. So, but primarily it's English. So Zambia, English, Zimbabwe, English, Tanzania is 50% Swahili, 50% English, Malawi, English. So it's really an interesting dynamic on the continent of Africa. Yeah. Good. Other questions? Yes, ma'am. Mike is coming. Mike is coming. We're giving him his exercise right here.
I got to try to beat Pastor Scott.
You better move faster. My name is Libby Connors. I was wondering, how much persecution do you have to deal with?
Good question. So how much persecution? In Zambia, we have religious freedom. We don't face, our Zambian brethren don't face. In fact, Zambia is, as of 1992, became a constitutionally Christian country. And the reason they went that way is because they wanted to push back against the Islamic bleed from the north that's coming down. And they wanted to say, hey, you're welcome here, but we are Christian, small c. You understand what I mean, right? So it's constantly Christian. But because of that, it gives us freedoms with the gospel. I mean, even the pushback that we might get going into a public school and sharing the gospel and reading the Bible, there's very little pushback, but even if there were pushback, we're constitutionally Christian. You can't stop us from that. So that's Zambia. Now, you go into some of these other countries, like where we have one of our graduates up in the Sudan, there's civil war there right now between two warring factions. The government and the rebels and Muhammad, and you're going to hear Muhammad's testimony in the morning service. Muhammad is caught right in the middle of all of that. Former Muslim who came to Christ and is now church planting back in the Sudan. So it's a country-by-country issue to answer that question. Remember, there's 58 countries on the continent of Africa. You could take the United States and put it in Africa. I think it's 5 of them. I think you can put the United States in there 5 times. I think that's right. But it's a lot. So very, very large continent, very diverse people groups. And you cross a border and you can be in a whole nother world. So you guys are great. These are great questions. Somebody else? Question? Yes, ma'am. Oh, that was easy. You didn't have to go very hard, did you?
I have 2 questions.
Yes, ma'am.
One, how do you deal with the war in Sudan? And number 2, we had some American Baptist missionaries that have been over there for years. They were in Zaire, and then they went to South Sudan. Do you by any chance know Ann and Bill Clemmer?
Okay, the second question, no, I don't think I do know Ann and Bill. The first question, what do you do? You live wisely in those contexts, and you live courageously. There are no guarantees. Well, there's no guarantees anywhere, is there? Right? But there's no guarantee of safety. There's no trick that everything can be fine. But then I think back to the New Testament, and I recall, and you probably know this too, that of the 12 apostles, only one died of old age. The rest of them got killed for proclaiming the gospel. Right? Fast forward to 2023. Look, we're not trying to go out and get killed. Nobody has a death wish. We're going to do everything we can to be wise and proactive and use the facilities that God's given us. But we can't be fearful. The gospel must be proclaimed to the ends of the earth, right? And that's why it's so important that we, who God has called to be here, that we are laboring together in prayer. As Paul called us to, praying for men like the Jumas and the Okojos and Muhammad up in Sudan. God is able to protect His own and glorify Himself. So I don't have a really good answer for that question, dear sister, but it's a good one.
Well, I was thinking more in terms of you're planning your churches in the middle of a situation. Are you still able to do that?
Yeah, so Muhammad right now actually has had to flee from city to city, and we may be bringing, his sending church is working to actually bring him out as a refugee across the border into, I think, Uganda, because the situation is right now, because he's a fighting age male, and he's not aligned and he's not on either side. So when the troops come through, they want to grab these men and conscript them to fight for their side. And so he's now fled to the third. Right now he's in Port Sudan, and he's had to. He's connected with local churches, tried to start a church. That was blown apart when the Civil War hit. And then he went to another city, and now he's in Port Sudan. And so it very well may be that he needs to move with the Sudanese who are crossing the border into Uganda and go with them and minister to them there. So he hasn't yet, but that's what I think is probably going to happen in this particular case. Good. Great questions. You guys, I love this. This is great. Yes, brother.
Yeah, my name's Dana Perkins. And did you say you had somebody in Somalia?
We have a brother. He's not in Somalia, but he's in East Africa reaching the Somalians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just know that that's been a country that tribal warfare and...
Yes, very difficult. Yeah, very difficult. In fact, I don't know where it sits right now, but it's usually number 1, 2, or 3 on the most difficult to reach countries in the world. North Korea being always up there, obviously, and then Somalia is usually right up there as well.
I spent 3 months off the coast of Somalia back in '94, and
you were in the Navy, weren't you?
yes, I was.
The pirates. Did you do any pirate work?
No, we were in there to get the Americans out of the army out of there.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So back in somewhere, trying to remember what year it was, 2008 maybe. I traveled to Somalia. So we flew up to Ethiopia. You can't get into Somalia, so you fly to Ethiopia and you get a little paper that they sign and they stamp, and we took a little flight up into Hargeisa in the northern Somalia, and I spent a week up in Somalia. Went out by road through the desert, went out to the Gulf of Aden, and spent time out there. And so Very, very difficult place.
You got a second bell in a few minutes.
A second bell. Thank you. All right. Okay, good. Anyone? These are great. Anybody else have a question that you'd like to ask? Any questions? Comments?
How about I ask one?
Okay, Micah. All right.
So, considering Zambia is a country where you have a lot of this religious freedom to
Yes.
operate as within missionary work, what would be the problems that you actually are facing in terms of ministry?
I'll tell you one of the biggest challenges is the health and prosperity movement. It's across Africa, but Zambia is one place. So if you read behind missiologists, especially American ones, they're talking about this wonderful movement of God and how the church is growing in Africa, and it's set to become the next epicenter for Christianity. And I actually think those things are true, but it's not the way they are saying it. The majority of this church growth is the African prosperity gospel, which is no gospel. It's not the gospel. It is essentially African traditional religion with a different coat on. So instead of the witch doctor, you've got the man of God. Instead of the witch doctor giving you the feather bones with the blood and it's all tied up and you wear it as an amulet to protect you around your waist, instead of that, you get the holy water from the man of God to anoint your car, to anoint your business, so that you can have blessings. It's all about material gain. Let's leverage God. Basically, God is an ATM. And if you press the right buttons, the money will come out. That is not Christianity. That is not the gospel. And so then what happens is you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Africans who will say they're Christian, but they've been inoculated against the gospel. See how that works? Satan is very clever. Thus, we need to leverage places like CABU to train men to proclaim the gospel, expositional preaching, high view of the church, understanding of who God is. So that's what we're seeking to do by God's grace. Yeah, thank you. All right, I think probably another bell is coming up here. Yeah, you good if I stop early? Yeah, I've never had a church say no. All right, let me pray with us, all right? And then Lori and I are going to hurry back to the table there just so you'll know where you can find us, and we'd love to chat with you a bit more. All right, Father, thank you for this time. Thank you for this church, this fellowship of believers who for 30 years, I think, maybe even longer, have stood together side by side in the work of ministry in Africa, and have labored together with us through their partnership and through their prayers and through the financial support that they give. Lord, I pray that you'd bless this congregation, continue to bless this congregation. Bless Pastor as he's away, and bless us this morning and in the morning service, that you might meet with us in your word, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, thank you. You are dismissed.